What are the most important vehicles to Ford's history, and what are the best V8 engines? So we're going to go over a couple of the bullet points and the most important part of Ford's history. Now, the moving assembly line has to be Ford's greatest invention. This made the Model T being able to build in 90 minutes instead of 13 hours. So that was their first biggest accomplishment. The Model T then set sales records, selling over 15 million units in the lifespan of the Model T and selling over 4 million units just in 1923 and 1924 alone. Then after that, it is probably the Ford Flathead. Because of the reliability and the one-piece monoblock casting, the Ford Flathead is considered Ford's greatest manufacturing invention because it basically had no changes to it the whole time except for a couple of modifications, and it lasted for 21 years. Then the Ford Thunderbird and the Ford Mustang, as far as vehicles, one of the most interesting parts about Ford, Chevy, and Chrysler's history is how they switched to pushrod engines in the 1950s, and some of them switched to single overhead cam sooner than others. Some eventually switched to dual overhead cam, and some, even like Chevy, stuck with the pushrod overhead valve engine. So there's some misconceptions about why Chevy and General Motors stay with the pushrod overhead valve engines. Now, a lot of people say it's a tribute to their customers that, their customers prefer pushrods. That's about 50% of the picture there. They really also stick to it because the manufacturing cost of overhead valve engines is less than single overhead cam and dual overhead cam. So there's more moving parts in a single overhead cam engine, as you can see, and especially with a dual overhead cam. Now, my preference, most of these videos are single overhead cam showing the cam gears. Now, one confusing thing that a lot of people don't know is there's certain parts that are only in a single overhead valve configuration that are not in a dual overhead cam, and they're also not in a pushrod engine. So that would be a rocker arm shaft, and cam followers. So in a dual overhead cam, you have an extra set of camshafts, so there is no need for rocker arms and rocker arm shafts. In a pushrod engine, you have one cam in block directly above the crankshaft, so there are no rocker arms in that configuration. Now, as you can see, in the single overhead camshaft, the second biggest misconception is the valve train. So some people will say, dual overhead cam breathes better. That's partially true. It revs higher. See, in a single overhead cam with forked rocker arms, you can have 24 valves in a V8. You can have 4 valves per cylinder if you use a forked rocker arm.